Hello and welcome to the CX Files podcast. I'm your host, Mark Hillary. For the next few editions, we're going to be exploring some of the major CX changes in 2018 and what we should all be looking out for in 2019. My guest for this first podcast focused on looking ahead to 2019 is Steve Weston. Steve is a managing partner of SK Weston & Co., based in Washington, D.C. Steve himself has over 25 years of consulting experience in the field of CX and BPO, and with his team of consultants, they're advising clients all over the world. I last ran into Steve personally earlier this year in Jamaica, but I believe the time before that was in South Africa. He really is that well known and respected as a CX expert globally. Steve and I had a conversation, first looking back at 2018 and then turning our attention to the year ahead. Okay, so let's go straight to the interview. Okay, so it's been quite an eventful year, 2018. We're almost at the end now. But what do you think happened in 2018 for CX? I mean, were there any surprises, or was there anything that really confirmed some of your predictions perhaps at the start of the year then?
Yeah, I would say it's a mixed bag. On the positive side, what did hit my predictions were the emphasis around trying to uniform that customer experience around various channels, especially self-service channels or omni-channels, social media, text, chat, and then number two, obviously, was the AI component, which certainly has changed some of the attributes of CX, in that you're automating the simpler type of transaction. So what you have left are the more complex, the harder ones to solve, which from a CS perspective is a big deal, and that providing the tool sets to your customers and to your call center agents to deliver that excellent customer experience. What I say it's a mixed bag is because I think there were great advancements. Well, let me put it this way: the two buzzwords, omnichannel, AI. I think we're overused to an extent in that, yes, companies now have a broader offering in terms of their self-service channels that have helped to customer experience. But it's interesting because they think that they've hit that mark where they're really adding outstanding customer experience. But if you look at the data that comes out of a lot of the surveys from customers themselves, what they're looking for though is that one, that proactive reach. So whether I reach out to you via SMS or I reach out to you via social media, that the experience you're delivering to me is not only uniform, but it's proactive, and that you're using a lot of data to try to not only answer my question, but be proactive in terms of being able to upserve and upsell. And I think a lot of companies have missed the mark on that end by thinking just by offering the various omni-channels that they have solved, or they have reached that high level of that customer experience expectation. The good news, Mark, though, is that data analytics, and especially analytics around self-service, has come a long way over the last year. There's a lot of great data out there that companies can use going into 2019 to actually be able to now take those channels and offer a more outstanding customer experience, based on the factors I just discussed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I think that certainly one of the points you raised there about automation or robotic process automation, RPA, as everyone's calling it, Combining this with artificial intelligence really seems to be the kind of silver bullet that's taking automation beyond the kind of typical hype cycle.
Absolutely, it's definitely headed there. It's got a ways to go. I think people, overestimated what could be done this year. But to your point, it's exactly dead on. I mean, the RPAs and that type of technology, the artificial intelligence has made CX that much more advanced over the last year. And based on some of the outcomes, like I said, it can only improve even further going into 2019.
Were there any major flops, where you saw people predicting stuff? Because I think that one of the things that I keep on talking about year after year is virtual reality, and I think it's almost each year we keep saying that it's almost there but not quite.
Yeah, I would say that's a very good point, Mark, as well as I wouldn't call AI or RPA a flop. It's nowhere near at the level right now where the hype was and what the expectations were. Mm-hmm. I think a lot of the automation can be done on simple, repetitive tasks, and that certainly influences the whole CX universe. But it was nowhere near the predictions that in terms of automation that was discussed. And I think it's several years away. I think we'll eventually hit it. But I think it's the same with your virtual reality type of comment. No question. It's just the technology is just not where it should be quite yet to make that a reality.
Yeah. I mean, certainly with RPA, I think the software companies, or the four big ones at the top, they're growing by about 40% year on year. So we're in the middle of a summer storm here, actually.
I was going to say, what was that?
that was an enormous lightning bolt.
Wow.
So I'll just go back on that point.
Yes.
So the top four RPA software companies, they all seem to be growing at about 40% a year. So clearly, if we're looking out 3, 4, 5 years, then it's going to be enormously different by that time, isn't it?
Oh, it has to be. There's no question about it. I think we'll, again, look at a completely different CX universe 3 or 4 years, down the road. The amount of investment that's being made, and also the advancement on the automation on technology, no question will get us there beyond just the simplistic task. But I do believe, it's probably 2 or 3 years out. I don't think it's, something like people predicted this past year that it was all coming this past year, which was a bit of an overstatement. But it will come.
Okay, so looking forward to next year, what's on your bullet point list of things we should be looking out for then?
Right. So, like I mentioned, and it's maybe a bit repetitive from what I just said, I think on the simpler side, before we get to the automation, the predictive analytics, the use of self-service analytics will be more prevalent going into next year. In that, we should see an advanced, proactive type of a uniform service across those channels. If companies use the data that's put in front of them. And like I said, huge advances over the last year that allow companies to do that, and that's what customers want when they talk about CX and what they're truly looking for. They want the system, no matter what channel, that they will be proactive and not just answer their question, but offer upsell and cross sell through those channels. The same thing can be said for advances in RPA, where more tasks will be automated which will allow for that additional service to value add type of calls, no matter what the channel is. The third item, which I'm a bit on the fence about, and hopefully this will make sense to you. On one end, companies are really trying to expand their social media presence, and again, that proactive, uniform customer experience. But it's a double-edged sword, and I think companies are going to really grapple with this, and that data protection and data security is such a hot issue for customers, and you can't deliver a lot of the services that customers want through those channels without conflicting with some of the data security concerns. In that, that's where a lot of this data comes from, and it'll be interesting to watch if individuals and companies start to back off a bit on that kind of delivery of service through Twitter, through Facebook, because of these constant data concerns. So that's the only kind of negative on the horizon. It'll be interesting to see how those kind of conflicting issues pay out.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen in Europe this year the introduction of the GDPR regulations on data control, and certainly it's having a big effect on companies operating in Europe. I wonder if I know that the American legislation is not quite as strict, or actually nowhere near as strict, but perhaps consumers themselves are going to start demanding this when they see the way that companies in Europe are behaving now.
Well, that's exactly it, and just today, it's like every week now, there's more and more data security issues coming out about Facebook and Twitter, and most social media platforms, and there's going to reach a point where people are just say enough already, and it could be that people start pulling off those platforms if their concern is high enough, and or the government steps in, and there is a push, to be honest with you, to implement some of the European standards, because these companies, just seem to have a trouble policing themselves and not taking this seriously. Mm-hmm. So, that's the one interesting thing that might change some of the CX strategies going forward next year.
Thanks for listening to the CX Files podcast. Please take a moment to review the podcast, because this helps other listeners to find it. And if you have any suggestions, then get in touch with me on Twitter or LinkedIn. I am @Mark Hillary with 2 L's, or just search Google for Mark Hillary.